Bernie Clark. I'm the creator of YinYoga.com, and today we're going to visit the land of the dragons. There are some really deep benefits from doing the dragons. First of all, it's a lovely way to get deep inside the hip socket and release all the tension there. It also can be a nice stretch for the adductors, and it's a pretty deep stress for the quadriceps and the hip flexors. This is a really juicy pose, so it also has many emotional and mental benefits. Just staying in the pose is a yoga all on its own. The dragons come in many different flavors and varieties, and there's bound to be one that will work for you. It can also help with sciatica by helping to stretch out the muscles that sometimes compress the sciatic nerve. Now, some of the people who should be careful of the dragons would include people who have very sensitive knees, because there could be a lot of pressure in the back knee, or if the ankles are a little bit troubled. So some ways we can handle those is, first of all, having a rolled up towel or some support. You can put this underneath the knee itself, or you can use it underneath the ankle as a bit of a bridge. So for the knee, there's a couple of options here. As we'll be leaning forward into this, there can be a lot of pressure into that back knee. So again, putting a blanket or a towel or some sort of support here may be all it takes to make this pose accessible for you. Again, if the back ankle feels strained, you can put a rolled up blanket there. Another way to take pressure off the back kneecap is to use a cushion, a foam chip block, and have your shin on the block so the knee is actually floating. That way the knee is not touching anything. As you can see here, the shin presses against the block, so the knee is actually not touching the floor. Some people prefer to tuck the back toes under. They find that takes pressure off the knee. Alternatively, other people find that they press the top of the back foot into the floor, especially emphasizing the little toe side. That may take some pressure off the knee. The thing that we want to be careful of when we come into this pose is a right angle between your thigh and the hips. And this is common for beginners. We'll have all the weight on that back knee. So you really want to get the sense of leaning forward into this one. The more you come down and forward, the less pressure will be on that back knee. Especially as we come to the other options. You want to make sure that you don't move the hips backwards when you come up, which again puts too much pressure on that back knee. So we lean forward down into the pose, and then without moving the hips, you can come into all the other variations. Now, coming into the dragon, it can be a little bit confusing, but it's quite simple. You just start on your hands and knees, and then to the degree you can, step one foot forward. Walk the foot forward so you get the alignment right, so the knee is above the heel to begin with. And then the next stage is to move the back knee away. So you can tuck the back toes under, slide the back knee back. And you might need to do that 2 or 3 times, so you get nice and low here. Once you're here, then you can just let the hips sink forward and down. Now you're in the pose. You know you're in the pose if you start to feel a challenge. And everyone's going to feel this in different places, depending on your unique anatomical structure. Some people will feel it on the outside of the hip. Most people will get some sensation at the top of that back thigh. The quadricep gets quite juiced up here. As always, if you're feeling it, you're doing it. Then you can become still. Now, some other options, some people love to have a block or some support underneath the outside hand. Some people like blocks under both hands. So just get to where this is doable. Now, once you're in the basic pose, we have many other options. This is the baby dragon. So it's the first one. And one option is just to stay here. If this is juicy enough, then you don't need to go further. The next stage may be the high-flying dragon. And we can come into this in stages as well. The reason we do it in stages is so that we don't move the hips backwards, again, putting pressure on the kneecap. So the first stage is simply hold the front leg with the outside hand. That will also keep the leg in alignment here. Check. If you feel painful pinching in at the hips here, it may be, again, because of your anatomical shape. The top of the hips may just be a little bit more pronounced for you. You can get around that by just pointing the toe outward, knee outward, and just let the leg abduct a little bit, and now you can go around that point. To continue into the high-flying dragon, you bring both hands onto the thigh. And you can start just by resting your chest on your thigh. This puts more weight into the hips, so this alone makes it juicier than the baby dragon. If you want to go further, now you can press down into the knee with your hands and lift the chest up. Again, being careful of that back kneecap. As you lift the chest up, again, there'll be more weight over the hips, making this juicier. From here, if you'd like to add the back bend, keep holding the thigh with the opposite hand. Bring the free hand up. More advanced students can maybe bring both hands up. This gets pretty juicy. And these poses, this version of the pose is a little bit more yang-like. So it does require some muscular stability in the upper body, but we're trying to relax the lower body so you can really sink into this one. The next option, the low-flying dragon, is to bring your outside hand inside the front leg, and then you move the foot a little bit out, just so you're not blocked out. Now your shoulder's inside the knee. And if you want, you can just stay here with arms locked straight. Now that you're not blocked out, you can actually bring your chest a little bit lower, making this a bit juicier. When you open up, you can bring the hands further forward. At this stage, some people like to rest onto the opposite elbow here. You can rest onto a block. If you're more flexible, rest onto 2 blocks. Some people find a bolster works quite well here. So you can just hang out on the bolster. If you're more open, you bring the elbows right to the floor. Now in all of these options, there's a fire breathing version where you tuck the back toe under and lift the back knee up. As you do that, it brings more weight forward into the hips, which makes this really super juicy. Some other options that can work deeply into the hips are the winged dragon and the twisting dragon. For these, you bring that outside hand inside the front foot and walk the foot a little bit over to the edge of the mat. Now for the twisting dragon, you can just keep your hand on the thigh and start to look up. So this would be stage 1. You're starting to bring some sort of a twist to the spine. In this version, you can keep the knee in, or you can slowly allow the knee to come out. Another option for those that are more flexible is to come onto the elbow. Again, you can put the elbow on a block or a bolster if you like, and then you start to look up. Again, optionally, you can let the knee be out to the side as well. Another option here is to raise the arm up, and we're allowing the arm to act like a lever to help twist us. For the winged dragon, it's nice to prepare for this by just flapping your wings a bit. So you just roll onto the edge of the foot, letting the knee come towards the floor. And we have the hand inside the foot, just so the foot doesn't slide inward and make this into the swan or the pigeon pose. And after flapping the wing a little bit, you're about as open as you're going to get. You just let the knee stay here. And again, you can stay in the high version of the winged dragon, or eventually come lower and lower, maybe adding the fire breathing version. Another option is the overstepping dragon, where here we're going to work the ankles a bit more. For this one, bring the front foot back a bit and then lean out over it. And you'd like to keep this heel as close to the floor as you can comfortably get it. And then you lean onto the thigh, bring the knee towards the floor. The knee's not actually going to touch the floor, not if you have an ankle, but you're going in that direction. And you can rest your chest on it until you feel something. Now most people are either going to feel tension in the back of the calves and the Achilles tendon, or they're going to feel compression in the front of the ankle bones here. Either is okay, just don't be where it's too much. Now some people get stopped here, and they think they can't go any further, and it's because the back knee is too far away. If the back knee is way back, and you lean into this, you might think, well, that's all I can do. I can only bring my knee here. So you bring that knee forward quite a bit. You're not really worrying about the back leg and the overstepping dragon, and then let the knee come down. And this is a great way to stretch out the calf, especially if you have difficulty getting your heels down to the floor in squat or down dog, and what's stopping you is tension. If it's compression, you'll notice it all in the front of the ankles, and that's pretty much it. Once you've reached that point of compression, you're not going to change your bones. So you hang out here for a bit. Perhaps the juiciest version of the dragons is the dragon splits. Now the intent here is not to get both legs straight. The intent here is to get to a place where you can feel the stress. So we can begin by simply letting your toes do the walking, and the toes will pull the foot forward. Go to where you feel a natural stopping place. Now for the dragon splits, we need to be open on the top of the back thigh, the quadriceps, the hip flexors, but we also need to be stretched out here in the hamstrings. So you just keep going until you naturally stop. Some people find it easier to tuck the back toes under, move the back knee away. So you just find that first edge and then become still. Most people will keep a lot of weight into their hands, and that's okay. But if your buttock is low enough that you can rest it onto a block, go ahead and do that, and now your hands are free. You can maybe come into the high flying splits version. If you have stability and balance, you can bring the arms up, and it's a bit of a back bend. The next stage is to walk the hands forward, folding out over the front leg. Again, we start to really feel the hamstrings here. And we are working through the yin tissues of the hamstring muscles, which are the fascial bags. So you hang out here. And if the body opens up, you might be able to go to the lower setting of the block. Hang out here for a bit. When it's time to come out, there's no way we can just jump out of this pose. So we have to come out slowly in stages. And if you remember back when you first started yoga, chances are you didn't really like down dog. But after this pose, you're going to discover that down dog truly is a yogi's best friend. So walk your hands back up, tuck your back toes under, and then enjoying this transition, step back to downward facing dog. Once you're here, you can move if you want, you can take your dog for a walk, you can wiggle the hips. And just a nice yawn counter movement here. And when you feel you've had enough of the down dog, you might want to just relax in child's pose for a few breaths. In terms of the joints, we're affecting the hip sockets mostly here. A little bit to the spine if you come up into the high-flying dragons. And from the meridian point of view, wherever you feel this, you're getting it. If you're feeling the outside of the hips here, you're working the gallbladder meridians. If you're feeling the top of the back thighs, you're working the stomach and spleen meridian. If you feel it through the inner groins, you're working the liver and the kidney meridians. If you're adding the high versions and you feel some compression into the lower back, you're getting the kidney and the urinary bladder meridians. So this pose can actually work all 6 meridian lines. But again, it depends on where you're feeling it. Now the dragons are pretty juicy, but if you mix up the variations, you might find that you can stay here for 4, 5, 6 minutes, or even a bit longer. So you might start with the baby dragon first, and then if the body allows, you can then go to the high-flying dragon, and then maybe the low-flying dragon. We call this dragon cycle number 1. Dragon cycle number 2 might take you to the winged dragon, where you can go to the baby dragon, the low-flying dragon, and then try the dragon wings. If you like, dragon cycle number 3 could be starting with the baby dragon for a minute or so, the high-flying dragon for another minute and a half or so, and then dragon splits for another minute and a half or so. So if you add about a minute and a half for each one of the 3 variations, you'll be in the pose for about 5 minutes, which should be enough for most people.